Welcome, everyone, to 2022, an episode, I believe, 113 of Dial the Gate. We just keep on trucking. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining us. Director Martin Wood and producer Martin Wood of Stargate is joining us for this very special episode. I'm always pleased to have him. And before we get started, I just want to invite you to share the show. If you like Stargate, and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click that like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will help the show continue to grow. We're almost at 20,000 subscribers. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the next few weeks on the GateWorld.net YouTube channels and later on here on Dial the Gate. Now, this is a live show, so with these live episodes, what we do is I talk with the guests. We get up to speed with them. We go down the rabbit hole of Stargate Memory Lane. And then what we do is we come back around to the live chat on youtube.com/dialthegate. If you're there now, you can submit questions to the guest for free. We have moderators who are going to curate those questions. And then at the second half of the show, we will then ask those questions to the guest. So here we go. Mr. Martin Wood, director and producer of Stargate. Thank you so much for coming back, sir. It's always a privilege to have you on.
You're welcome. You're the only person that calls me Mister, so I come back just for that, for the episode.
You've been busy lately. So your first feature with Paramount, you said.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was CBS had commissioned a movie from me and went to do it, and Paramount came in and said, "Hey, we're interested in this." And so Paramount Plus picked it up right away and ran with it. And it did extremely well. I guess it dropped just before Christmas and starred Adam Rodriguez and Jessica Camacho. And
what's the project called?
It was called A Christmas Proposal.
Okay. Which
was a little bit of a misnomer because it was actually it had nothing to do with marriage. It had nothing to do with anything like that. It had to do with Adam needing a girlfriend to fake out his family. And so the story is really about a lie that turns into this beautiful truth, and it happens at Christmas time. So it's why it was called Christmas Proposal. But it went. It was this whole thing with his Latin family that Adam and Jessica sort of helped guide, and it was so much fun to make. It was so much fun. Those two together made this project wonderful, and it was. We made it sort of last summer. I had to truck in 60 truckloads of snow into Whistler.
Of course.
So Whistler never lets you shoot in the town or in the village because there's always too many people there. But COVID had literally shut down the town for so long.
Wow.
And they said, "Yes, please come up. And so we went in there and shot in the village of Whistler and trucked in all this snow. And they thought it was just hilarious because they spend so much time trying to get rid of it at that time of year. And suddenly we had, 60 dump trucks full coming in.
Well, that's terrific. And so, okay, so that premiered this past Christmas, right?
It did, yeah. Yeah, it's available on
Paramount Plus?
Still, yeah. And CBS streaming has it as well. So it's a fun movie, and it doesn't need to be seen at Christmas time because it's really not a Christmas theme. It looks like Christmas because they wanted it to be. Honestly, it's a good movie any time of year, and it was a blast to do.
Absolutely.
I did that, and then on both sides of that, I did I've been doing Virgin River for Netflix. I've done, I think, 16 episodes for them or something. And Andy Makita came back this year to direct a couple of them. And so we finished season 4. I can't tell you when it's going to drop. And then they'll be picking up a season 5 too. So again, just sort of rolling in romantic drama for me. Very strange.
You also mentioned before we started the show, there was a bit of an on-set Stargate reunion with you and a few other cast members and a burgeoning new cast member.
I do a murder mystery a series called Aurora Tea Garden for Hallmark. Thing. I started the series. I've done like 9 of 18 of them or something like this, and Lexa stars in it as the friend of Candace Cameron Bure as they solve all these murder mysteries. And a couple of times now, I've brought Michael in to guest star in the background. He actually played a background player once, just telling her, telling Lexa to get off his property. Um, and in that one, that was the first one I actually brought Sam and Mia, his son and daughter, in with my son and daughter, Siri and Connor, to be the kids that were disrupting this investigation of the murder. And they were literally background players with Robin Dunn.
Okay, from Sanctuary.
So, yeah, and Ellie Harvey plays as well, and Niall Mater is number 3 on it. So he or number 2 on it. He comes in and he's now married to Candace. So there's a lot of people that we had on Stargate, come into it. But on this last one, I needed a young Lexa, a teenage Lexa. And I've known her daughter since she was born, and they look very, very much the same. So I asked if Mia could play young Lexa, and I think with much cajoling from mom and dad, she did, and so they were there. Candace Cameron Bure's daughter Natasha actually plays the young Candace in this thing as well. So we have 2 daughters playing the two young teenage versions of this. And it was hysterical because on one of the days that Lexa and Mia were both working, Michael had to come because as a minor, she has to have a parent on set that's not working. So Michael had to come and sit on set and made himself look incredibly bored. He wasn't. He was fascinated by the process. But,
but that's Michael. He's got to get in a mental jab.
Yeah. Well, it was pouring rain too. We were outside, and Michael and Lexa were sitting inside, going, "Man, am I ever glad I don't have a scene outside right now." So,
jeez, absolutely.
But yeah, that was a lot of fun getting them together.
We lost a couple people in the Stargate family since we last talked. The first, this was just devastating, was Cliff Simon.
Cliff,
yeah. I'm still getting over that one.
That one rolled through us very, very suddenly too. All of us were on social media that day when we heard, and it was really hard to talk to everybody about too, because he was such a good guy to everybody, and everybody considered him a friend. Michael Greenberg actually texted us with the information, and it went out from there. And then that was a tough one because he was in such amazing shape, and he was such an outdoorsman, and yeah,
it's you never know when life is going to come in with your number and say, right, you know what? But everyone that I have talked to who knew him, the beach was his temple. Yeah. And I don't think he would have wanted to be anywhere else. If couldn't
have chosen a better place. That's for sure. But yeah. And
you directed him.
I did
in what was for a long time my favorite Stargate 2-parter, Summit and Last Stand, and also a great episode, Abyss, which had its own on-set technical challenges with like I'd like to get into that a little bit and come back around to Mr. Garson and a little bit further down the show here. But Cliff was a friend of Michael Greenberg.
Yes,
and you directed his first appearance in Summit, Gould Mardi Gras. And this is an episode where when you read between the lines, the writers and everyone involved are really trying out future villains. I mean, there wasn't supposed to be a season 6, but at the same time, It could have been anything.
It was the cornucopia of boards, you know, of these ghoul that would come in, and it was like, okay, how far can we push this culturally, and you know, and how much can we do with and honestly, I think that part of the fun in that was building the costumes for them. You know, our costume designer came in with these gorgeous things. My favorite was Yu's costume. I have to say. But Cliff had this breastplate that was just, I mean, it was built for Cliff's body, you know, and that's the body he sported. He was a dancer. He was, you know, he just had this, there was a regalness to him that when you're looking at the people who would control the kind of legions that they would control, Cliff was probably one of the easiest to believe that he had that control. You know, I always felt that Apophis, Peter's Apophis was angry. And Cliff's ball never had to be angry. He could do it all with a smile. And you thought, that's the most dangerous. That's where it's dangerous, you know?
He's not wearing it all on the surface. You don't know how deep that rabbit hole goes.
No. And the funny thing is, Suan was always, for me, Suan was one of the people that you could look at and you could say, oh yeah, she's evil. Cliff, even though he had that visage, he had the, you know, the little mustache and the angular face and things like that, he had an easy smile to him, and you thought, is he really a bad guy? And then you realize, no, he's seriously a bad guy.
What was it like directing him in Abyss? Particularly with the fact that Rick was no longer on set all the time. His contract was so that he had some more flexibility to have some time off with his family. And you spent more time with Dan Shea as a consequence.
Yeah. Well, and that was a particularly physical episode too, because of the tilting set and because of all those kind of things. And Cliff came into that, and he said, I came up with this. And it's like, yeah, you came up with this. He goes, good, I'm going to have fun with it. And it's one of those ball inventions that you sit there going, okay, this is where he shines, because as soon as he shows up and you realize, oh, it's Ball that's doing this.
Yeah.
You know, it opens up more venues, more corridors that can happen. Because you're never sure when the system lords, it's like, okay, who's got control of this? Is it just Jaffa? Is it what are you going to see when you do this? Mm-hmm. And suddenly when a system lord shows up, it's like, okay, it gets exponentially worse now. And when it was Ball, it got seriously worse.
If I may insert into this, because I don't want to stop your train of thought, that the gold system lords, the gold themselves, have always been in very much the vein of comic book villains. And that's part of that is because of Rick's response to all of them, to keep it light and fun, and to keep a door open to the fourth wall to say, you know, part of us, come on.
Yeah.
Ball walks in that scene. Joel Goldsmith's music is playing. Mm-hmm. The low camera angle, the lighting. We haven't seen this guy for half a year. We don't know what he's capable of. I, as an audience member, for the first time, was genuinely scared for O'Neill.
For Rick.
Genuinely scared for that character. I was like, he's in a place where he's not going to get out of this anytime soon. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. You know, that was Ball. That was Cliff Simon all the way.
Yeah. And truthfully, what was funny is Rick used to always make fun of Cliff, because he'd go, well, you have the mustache, you should be doing a little bit more of this. And what's interesting to me is Cliff would constantly do this. He would constantly smooth his mustache. And I said, are you doing that because Rick told you to twist your mustache? And he goes, no, I just do that. And it's one of the things he does. I said, maybe stop doing it because it does look like a nervous twitch to me. It looks like, he goes, really?
Yeah.
So, and it was one of those things that he had, at one point he'd come in with a much spikier sort of goatee. And it was like, I don't think so. It just looks too much like you're trying too hard. And it looks like what you is doing with his, with his facial hair and things.
Exactly.
And he said, okay, good to know. And then he sort of just went to stubble a little bit more with it. And, the other time, I got to say that you get that reaction. And I know as a director, I'm trying to elicit that same reaction that when he comes around the corner in Abyss and you sort of see him for the first time and it's like, there he is. And it's just the angle that we're looking at him too is
slow motion and almost.
The other time is in Continuum, of course, where you don't know that Ball is involved with this until he comes in. It's like, oh, rats. Because he's got the brains to be able to pull it off, because he has that malice about him to pull it off. And it's so funny because if you knew Cliff in real life, that was 100% acting. That malice did not exist in Mr. Simon,
But that's a great performer right there. Yeah, when he comes through that gate in Continuum, that shot that you complained about, it just didn't look quite right. It didn't look quite right. But I mean, with Cliff, it's like, oh, here we go. We're in for something.
Yeah.
So, and it was so cool to be able to have him back for that. And really have resolution to that character. We can all stand back and go, you know what? We unfortunately we'll never get another performance out of him, but man, that man left a legacy. Not just on Stargate, but all of us who were privileged to get to meet him.
Yeah. And then how about the duplicating?
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that was more Ball than anybody needed. So
that's certainly true. Yeah. He talked about setting up those shots. Did you do any of those episodes where there were multiple?
No.
Okay.
None of those were mine.
Yeah. That was quite that was quite clever of him. And, just seeing something different. So.
Yes. Yeah.
We also lost Mr. Willie Garson.
Yes.
This one also just absolutely came out of left field. I had just interviewed him for the show months before, and I had never met him before. And I was so privileged to have time with him to get because I don't think he'd ever really done an interview for that character.
Really?
I haven't been able to find one anywhere. And Martin is so central to so many aspects of that show. You worked with him, I believe, in 200.
200 it is a show about him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell us about working with Willie.
What was really interesting about Willie was that he worked the humor.
Yes.
He continually worked the humor. Working with Richard Kind, Richard liked the humor written for him. When Richard did
Lucius.
When he came in to do all of his stuff, Richard is hysterical, but he likes it there. He likes to be able to make what's written hysterical. Willie likes to make it hysterical, whether it's there or not, And one of my favorite things is when he fakes the phone call. And he just turns away, and when you're sitting there on set and he just does something like that,
Was that not written in the script?
Not like that, no.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear it ring. It was on vibrate. Get me out of here.
There was a line, but it's the way he picks it up and just turns and starts to ad-lib after he walks away. When he does stuff like that, I have my headset on, but I hear the crew around me start to laugh, and because you can't help it, it's just funny, he kept doing it all the time. And he's sitting at the boardroom table, and he's pitching out these ideas which are so ludicrous. And what's funny is the one person who's not supposed to crack a smile is Judge.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris is killing himself. I'm like, Chris, you're in every shot. Come on, I can't hold an over of Willie when he goes, dude, he's making me laugh. I'm not doing it. I'm like, Chris, come on, you have to be that straight face with it, because the humor comes out of you not finding it funny. He was hysterical.
His chemistry with Rick was just like nothing else. I mean, there was a similar vein with Tom Macbeth, but it was just you could tell.
So, but yeah, Tom. Interestingly, Tom kept reaching for the character all the time. He was like, where am I? Am I bad? Am I good? Am I where am I? And it's like, well, you're bad, but you're trying to do something that's you think is good. So, and Rick would sit there going, no, you're 100% bad. You're the worst. And with Willie, even though Willie was doing stuff that was bad, he was you couldn't be mad at him. You couldn't say he was 100% bad, because he never knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, that whole plausible deniability thing is a great storyline. I love that storyline.
No, it's terrific. And the lizard people and the cover up at such and such. No, there was no, that's the first appearance of his. No, the genius of the 100th episode is that conceit that he lost his memory, and so he's just going out and saying anything, and they're like, well, if this ever comes out, the Air Force can use this as leverage.
Yeah. I mean, nobody thought we would get to 200, right? So
oh my gosh,
suddenly when there's an idea for 200, and I remember when I first picked up the first beat sheet on the script to look at it, I'm going, oh my God, are you serious? Are you serious? And then like all the different things that we ended up doing with it. And I mean, obviously the puppets were, for me, one of the most fun things to do, just because it was so different. And Peter West and I think I've told this story a number of times, where we went to Los Angeles to shoot with.
Yeah, that footage was shot down there.
Yeah, the Kyoto brothers, who actually did
Team America.
America. And I don't know if I've ever have you and I had a conversation about it before?
I have always wanted to talk to you about 200 for all different reasons.
I'm going to show you something that most people have never seen. And I have my own pictures from that time, from when we were there. And these aren't going to translate very well, but I can show you some very interesting things that happened there, working with the Kyoto brothers, and the puppets that they used. Some of them came from Team America.
Right. I always wondered about the background scientist characters. You have a lot of puppets that get like one shot of screen time. I was like, that I can't imagine the tens of $1,000s per puppet, Yeah,
so I mean, this is
there they are.
Spots right there.
Wow.
But I'll show you some of the fun parts about that I don't. I said I don't know how many times I've talked about this, but I don't know if I've ever shown the.
I've never seen that.
So this is actually how you set it up. Right now, what's interesting is Peter and I shot the footage live action. So what we did is we had the characters coming in, had the actors come in, and they were just dressed in street clothes. They came into the sets. We'd set the shot up. The actors would act it so that we got the voices for it. And now those voices went down to the puppeteers. They feed it into a machine that will make the mouth move.
So the Gilda Fluke?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And then we go in and they start. They've looked at the footage. They've seen what the actors did, and so now they're mimicking it. Now, here, this is an anomaly because you see me looking at the puppets, right?
Yes.
What happens is you never talk to the puppeteers. You talk to the puppets when you're directing them. So I'm sitting there talking to the puppets and saying, I need you to turn your head a little bit more like this and just.
Oh,
and
so you're just doing that. You're not told to do that. It's just what's happening.
No, it's just you don't even think about it because you'd be standing there staring straight up the whole time.
Yeah, but you're buying it. You're buying the performance.
And truthfully, they nod. They do it for you. And it's like it's hysterical.
That's funny.
Now, here's a couple of shots. Again, I don't know if I've ever said this to anybody before, but do you know who the stand-ins were?
No.
Alec Baldwin was one of our stand-ins, and the other one was Matt Damon.
Oh my God. That's great, man.
So when we were setting up shots, we'd have Matt Damon and Alec Baldwin there with us. You know, it was so much fun to do, and it was just like you were setting up shots, for a shot for a
right.
Scene. I don't know why that brightness is so weird, but
yeah, it works. There we go. Yeah.
Anyway, it was so much fun to do, and just being down there with these guys for, the time that we spent down there and directing these actors and coming back, and then of course everybody wanted to see all the footage. All the actors wanted to see how they looked. I sent Amanda a couple of pictures from there, just to show her who her character looked like, and it was hysterical. It was just so much fun.
Now, did you shoot the puppet footage before 200 principal photography or after?
No, we shot. It was well after, because what we did is we shot the actual scenes during the shooting. And then what I do is I just leave the camera locked off, take the actors out of it, and run it for the duration of time that we needed to do that.
So you have a plate, yeah. Yeah,
and then what we ended up doing was we had all the measurements and everything like that. And I remember it was Michelle Cummins was giving us all this, feeding us all this stuff. And we got down there, and Peter and I are looking at the shots going, we can't do it with these measurements. We literally can't do it with the measurements. We have to do it by eye, because we'd play the footage back and I'd be looking at it and we'd key the green screen out and I'm going, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. So we ended up literally doing it by eye, and giving that to them instead of using the distance and stuff, because the scale didn't work properly for us. And it really, in order to make it work, we just went, okay, hope this works when we get back. And it did. It worked beautifully.
When I was always surprised at how, as artists, it's sometimes more important to feel things through than to measure things through.
Yeah.
My argument with Bruce Woloshyn, and it's gone on for years now, was why didn't you just have a laser at the puddle so that you could scan into the computer the point at which the object dematerializes? Because he's always done it by hand.
Yeah.
Every one of those shots. And I think every one of those shots has always cost like $50,000, if I'm not mistaken.
They were at the beginning very, very expensive.
But Bruce said that they always cost the same amount. And Brad Wright has always said that as well. And Brad was always like, why is this always cost the same? Because it's the advancement in technology, and it's always the same. It's always was fixed. But Bruce would argue, he had to paint it by hand because of the weight of clothing, of it's not just going through the puddle, it's meeting a resistant surface.
Yeah,
and doesn't just let stuff through.
It would take time to go across your body like this, rather than just be gone when you step through. So as soon as you hit the event horizon, it wasn't like you were clearing a pane of glass. Mm-hmm. It was because it would come off of you like this, and it would seep off of you like that with a hard line on your shoulder. But then it folded in behind you as well.
It's reacting to you, and the script, the inner canon of the show backs this up. So it's just
And it
brilliant.
was one of those things when I started shooting on the side of the gate, which was sort of that invention of sort of sitting there and watching from one side to another. And where we got rid of the wormhole part of it. So I could look at both sides of the gate at the same time.
Yes.
It didn't happen very often. And it didn't happen very often because what James and what Bruce would always talk about, what everybody would talk about, is that it isn't an instantaneous thing. You know?
No, it's a few seconds.
You're making it look instantaneous.
Yep.
And I said, well, yeah, but it's so cool. And they're like, it doesn't really work like that. And what you would probably do is have a bit of a trail coming off of them too. And I'm saying, well, I'm not worried about that because of the gate itself. You can't see the horizon. You can't, if I'm directly at the side of the gate, you can't see the event horizon.
Correct. No, the gate's too wide.
It's wide enough to do it. And I said, so let's try and make it so that the time it takes to go through here is delayed just enough before they come out here.
Yeah. There was that one shot that I can think of. David Warry-Smith directed 100 Days. And it's the only time that I'm pretty sure the only time that Stargate did this was Rick goes in Stargate Command and then comes out on Eudora. And it's like delayed by just a few moments. At the beginning of the show, it was several seconds to get to the other destination. But later on, we learned that it was like just a few microseconds. So, you know, as you evolve this series, there's a few changes like that have to get made. But the artistry that goes into the shots and the composition like that, you stand back and you just go, wow, that was cool.
Yeah, and holds up today as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely holds up today, 100%. With 200... And Christopher Judge and I talked about this in a fair bit of detail, and I'm really interested in your thoughts. And you alluded to this just at the beginning, where it was, how are we going to do this? You know, I mean, the number of sequences that are in this thing, and what Chris said was that, and maybe you can piggyback off of this, was that every department just brought their A game.
Yeah,
knew what they were getting into. What they were getting into was a gift anyway, because the show has lasted for 10 seasons. So this is a chance to send a love letter back to the fans, thanking them for allowing you guys to still be on the air for that long.
Yeah, very much. And I mean, here's the extent that it actually shows you that everybody brought their A game. Rick showed up for scenes that he was invisible in.
That's right. He had a green skirt, like thing on.
He had the green suit on, and he's like, he was there for the shower scene. And we don't even see where he
just says nope.
Like, I'm here. And
that's funny.
And he wanted to be there for the chair turning scene right at the beginning. And I'm like, you don't have to, Rick. And then he insisted on being in the walking down the hall. I got a coffee cup and I got this. And that was such a pain in the butt for the guys, because they actually ended up making a new coffee cup. The one that he had, they couldn't use. So, but yeah, he's walking down the hall, and I have pictures of him walking down the hall with Chris. You know, and it's a hysterical scene because he was there.
What was your? Would that have been your favorite besides the puppets, or were some of there's? I think the teen one is hysterical. I think that's so funny.
Yeah, that one was funny. I wasn't as familiar with One Tree Hill at the time, and that's sort of what it was based on, was that kind of feeling. And so I didn't embrace that one the way that I did with sort of the I loved the planet exploding
with the furlings.
The furlings,
you introduce them and then you kill them.
The furlings to me were hysterical because it was a husband and wife team that played them, and they were so funny. And the other one was the Farscape one that I had so much fun with because we had Ben there and Claudia, you know, and just being able to do the Farscape bit was very funny.
Whose idea was it to reverse Michael and Ben so that Ben was no longer playing Crichton? I think that Ben was originally supposed to play Crichton because Vala plays Aaron.
I'm not sure whose idea it was. I would give it to Brad, but it could have been any one of them in the room. I think that sort of went, "Oh, this is going to be hilarious," and Brad, um, Brad playing the engineer, um,
Because
was,
Paul McGillion wasn't available.
and that was on the day. It was me looking at Brad going, and him going, "Oh, I can't." It's like, come on, and he goes, "I'll do it," and it's like. It was very funny. It was very funny. And I mean, all of that stuff, everything we did was so much fun to do. And knowing that it was being made for the audience that loved the show, you know, every time you do a show, you see, we don't want to alienate anybody with this. You don't want to, you want new viewers to come in and watch it.
Of course.
On 200, it was like the only people that are going to really get this, that are going to understand the depth of this humor, are the fans that really love this show.
Exactly.
And the reaction I've had so many times from people who knew the show, I mean, all your fans, has always been this very positive energy coming for it. And people that didn't know the show, when I say, "Oh, you got to watch 200," they go, "Really? What was that all about? I didn't understand it." And then you go, "Well, you wouldn't understand unless you saw 100, unless you saw, unless you knew the backstory with the Furlings and things like this, you wouldn't get half the jokes that were in
And
there."
Jack and Sam getting married, and perhaps Jack and Daniel instead getting married with the shippers and the slashers.
Yeah, and that scene again where we were able to bring all the people that had been in all the audience for it was all the people who had been with the show from the beginning, and you start looking at everybody, wow, we've spent 10 years together. It was pretty cool.
What about the Wizard of Oz sequence?
That was funny. There's a place in Burnaby called Central Park, and when we were sort of location scouting for a number of different things, I was looking for the sort of the yellow brick road kind of feeling to it, and I also needed to shoot a bunch of other things. That whole chase with the replicators.
The replicators, yeah.
That giant crane shot that sweeps across the ground and chases our guys. And I shot, Tilk at the gate when they come through and their strings are cut. That's also.
Oh, so you're doing all those elements at that.
I'm shooting all these elements at one time, and the One Tree Hill stuff too.
That's right.
Version of it was a lot of it was shot there. But when I came around the corner and I looked, and there's this little windy road this little windy path. I thought, oh, I know where we're going to shoot this. Then I know where we can crash the ship. And it was that was another one where, because we constantly made the Wizard of Oz connections, it really had to be in this in 200. And again, that's one of those things that the true fans are going to know. And everybody else is going to go, well, why did they choose Wizard of Oz? I understand why you chose Farscape. I understand why you did. But why did you
20 Wizard of Oz references throughout the show?
Yeah.
There's a lot of subtle ones.
Yeah. And a lot of it was Amanda coming up with stuff like that. And then and the writers writing stuff in and the actors just grabbing onto it and going, yeah, let's use these references,
Just craziness. Yeah. I am thrilled that you guys did it, that you had the budget to pull something like that off, and I think it will continue to go down as like one of the top 10 of the show, because of we all know what it is that you're doing, and you guys do it so well, and that's just sending us a kiss.
Yeah, that, I mean, truthfully, 200 and Lost City were the two that we spent massive amount of money on, and they had the money to make them what they needed to make them.
Lost City, very much. I wanted to talk about this one because in some respects it's 4 episodes. It's Lost City 1 and 2, and then it's Rising 1 and 2. They all fold together.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about? Because for a long time, that we had, and I was on the news side of this at this point. There were rumors about the Stargate feature film, the Stargate movie. We're gonna finish the show and do a movie. And Lost City, in my understanding, was many of the elements in that were from one of the proposed outlines that was potentially going to be the movie had season 5 ended and with the threat of Anubis, and that was it.
Right.
So
Yeah,
tell us about creating that with the team.
I mean, that was for me, Lost City was its own entity. I wasn't thinking about Atlantis at the time.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people were thinking about Atlantis at the time, because Lost City was so big, and the mechanics of what was going to be Rising 1 and 2 wasn't solidified yet when we were into what Lost City was going to be. So for me, Lost City just needed to be this denouement kind of feeling to what SG1 was doing, until they found sort of this was like finding, a new planet within, walking distance. And that whole idea of finding a power source, of finding, of having that influence that the chair gave you, that all those things that came together in Lost City were important elements to keep on their own. Because if we tied them too much to Atlantis, if we tied them too much to where we were going with it, I think that it would have got lost in Lost City 1 and 2. It needed to be all discovery. Nothing. Does that make sense? I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that what we didn't want to do was set it up as if, okay, this is where we're going with this.
Right.
It needed to be all discovery for the team, where they had no idea what it was. It's like finding the extra chevron. It's
exactly.
Like getting, it's when you find like it's one thing to blow up suns. Okay. It's another thing to find a power source that you can control.
That's true.
Sorry, Amanda. I hate to bring up that painful memory. But,
you blow up one sun, everyone expects you to walk on water.
Exactly. But understanding what those were going to be, and then trying to design those things with the idea of design elements that would go into what we were going to see, was a big part of what Rising was. Rising was, what are the elements we really like about this? And what do we move into the new series, into Atlantis, to make it look like it is something different? It's the same thing that would have happened with Universe. There are elements that need to be in the human tech that will allow us to do this kind of stuff. So it's not just wiring up, a new battery. No.
There's a whole philosophy behind all of it.
Yeah.
We had Jessica Steen on at the end of our first season on Dial the Gate. She was wonderful, and she was very upfront and honest about the things that went down on set, about Burning Man and all these other things that she felt contributed to her. They went with someone else. What was it like working with her? I'd like to get to William Devane in a moment, but what was it like working with her on the set and bringing Elizabeth Weir to life for the first time?
Yeah. She and Torri are two different characters.
Oh yeah.
Very, very different. It's not like Torri picked up what Jessica did.
No.
Torri created a new Weir. And Jessica played a softer version that was, and truthfully, I mean, part of this was me in conversation with her, and part of it was Rick and the way he wanted her to play it. Part of it was obviously Brad and and the team sort of saying, this is what we need this person to be. I think that certainly she had the strength to do it, but it was a different strength. And I honestly think, and this is nothing about Jessica. It's nothing. It's not about what she did with the character. It's where the character ended up going. I think Torri gave it that gravitas that it may not have come to the going toe to toe with Shepard was something that Weir did very well, and that Amanda did very well. Amanda, I mean, when she came in, it was like, no, we're not doing that. I mean, she was able to do it without, it was just, this is what we're doing. This is what command looks like at this point. Whereas Torri had to find Weir's command. And,
it's a new base.
And it was also something she'd never done. Weir was not a command leader like that. And so finding her feet there, and I'm talking about Weir, not Torri. Finding her feet with Flanagan or with Shepard was part of the story. When Jessica went toe to toe with O'Neill
and with Kenzie.
Yeah, and I mean, it was different, I think, than the control that Weir would that Torri would have brought to it. So I didn't. I mean, I was on the periphery of the decision making on that. I was not privy to some of the inner machinations of it, but I was there. I'm not saying I wasn't part of it, but I was on the outside part of it, and I did not disagree with the change. I felt that Torri was a strong choice for that character.
We ran a poll saying which Weir people liked more, and I was really shocked that it was nearly 40% the number of people who would have been willing to give Jessica Steen's Weir a go into Atlantis. And it makes you, regardless of whatever you guys had to work with on set, what in terms of what was shot on the screen, I often would look back on those episodes and be like, what would Atlantis have been like with Jessica's interpretation of that character? It would have changed. It would have evolved the texture of the series.
I think, and this is me, just a personal opinion about this. I think what Jessica would have brought was a more feminine perspective to it, whereas Torri brought we're not talking about men and women, we're talking about people version of it. So she brought the non-gender leader into it. I mean, there's obviously she was very much a female character, but
of course,
her decision making was not. Jessica would have brought a much more emotional version of it, which is what Rachel brought into it when she came in too. I mean, which was really interesting because Rachel's character did not have that bent originally. She was a warrior.
Taylor was on her feet fighting through and through, but still just by nature of, and it's the argument that Amanda made at the beginning with Carter as well. Don't write a woman, write a good character, and the woman qualities are going to come through. Yeah.
And I think with Jessica, you could see that in Lost City. You saw that and it wasn't there was no diminishment of power for it. It was just that perspective would have been different, I think. And so when I think about the difference between Jessica and Torri in that role, I wonder, and I mean, in thinking about Weir, you have to think about a number of things. You have to think about Hewlett. You have to think about Flanagan. I'm sorry, I'm using their.
Yeah, you have to think about McKay and Shepard.
You have to think of McKay and Shepard, and you have to think about what that dynamic was. And then, I mean, Ronan wasn't even a part of it at that point. But when you bring Ronan into it, there's those three characters that are very very incredibly different, and how that character works with those three, and with Taylor. They're when you look at the team, it would have been a different team, And one of my favorite episodes with Torri was the operation, the brain operation, where
yes, Lifeline.
Yeah,
Adrift in Lifeline.
And that was a place where you got to see a Weir that was whose defenses were down.
Yeah, she's more vulnerable.
Way more vulnerable than that. And I think Torri did an amazing job of it.
Yeah.
But that for me was one of them. And the other one was Tabula Rasa, where we're not seeing the formed version of the characters yet. We're seeing
that's an episode that Amanda was in. Weir was already gone at that point.
Right. So what you're seeing is these characters that are these characters that are
abstracts.
Abstracts themselves. That's where if there was a Torri or a Jessica, where you would have seen the change that I'm talking about, the difference that I'm talking about between them, because you got to see McKay without defense, you got to see Shepard without defense, you got to see where you're actually seeing people that don't know how to move forward, and that's where you get that raw version of Weir from those two would have been in something like that.
Yeah, that's a great episode where you have. It comes down to, that's an episode where when you remove all of the foibles of a person, all of their memory and everything else, all they have is really their assertiveness to engage.
Yeah, and their raw creative brains.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about that episode is Amanda, in a lot of the earlier scenes where she's in, is not front and center. She's in the background and she's thinking. Yeah. She's thinking her way through it, which is completely Carter. She's like, okay, I need to figure out my plan of attack here before I'm moving it forward with anything. Right.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Is those things inherently come forward. And I think what you would have seen if there had been a weird character there, you would have seen this difference that I'm talking about between Jessica and Torri show up in its rawest form.
Mm-hmm. William Devane. Introducing the president. This was actually done in Inauguration, the episode before Lost City. Really, the first episode that's having us, in all honesty, firmly break continuity with our reality. Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to talk with Brad about that choice. It's like, you know what, we've got to make this, at some point we've got to make this story bigger. Yeah, it can't just be underground in Colorado all the time. I think you guys took advantage of the X2 set. For the White House.
For the White House, yeah.
And you actually used a shot of that in Continuum of his speech that you never got to use in Lost City, that you held it over. Tell us about bringing in the president.
It wasn't the first time Bill's played the president.
This is true.
and we were talking about that, and he said, not my first time in this set either.
Oh, wow.
In the Oval Office. And I loved his president. I loved his president, especially in Continuum, where everything is falling apart.
Right.
And the idea of a very, very capable president who asks for the information rather than has the information, for me, was a big part of what that president was. He's not going to be the guy that just lays down the law.
No, he and Hammond served together. I mean, he's from the chain of command. He recognizes the importance of the chain of command.
Yeah. And asked the right questions and had a humility to him that played beautifully as a president, It's before we saw an Obama president that could ask those questions without feeling, like. It was honestly. There's been a few presidents that you guys have had that have been those kind of presidents that you believe would reach out to the people who really knew what was going on and would take that in and then try and make decisions with those people rather than here's my decision for a thing, which is what a lot of movie presidents do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they make decisions, they'll hear something and then they just make a decision about it.
Right.
And
that's how I kind of looked at Harrison Ford with Air Force One. You know, one of my favorite interpretations. Yeah. But depending on that situation, you know, that's an action movie. So,
but I mean, that's part of it. And you know, you look at what's the one, the White House Falling.
I haven't seen that one. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
but that's again presidents that make decisions and things like this, but without having to think about, you know, what the ramifications of the people around them are. In this case, Bill was making decisions that felt that you really liked him. You really appreciated him being the president, because you could get. I mean, we're up flying F-15s and looking for an answer, you know, and it's so easy for a movie president to be you know, bluster and
Patton.
You know, Patton or 4th of July. You know, it's right. The you know, those kind of presidents that they're, you know, this is what's gonna happen to be able to make this happen, and instead it's. His character was very much, I know you need this permission. I know you need these things. I'm going to do that. And it was in a way that you felt there was a humility to it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I was so just delighted when you guys brought him back for Continuum, because it was, I thought, one of the crying shames that we never saw him again after Lost City. He was mentioned a fair bit. You know, you could tell that there was a reverence for him, for the character. He left his stamp on the Stargate franchise for sure.
Yes.
And then when we got him back in Continuum, it was like, oh yeah, this is the cherry on top for sure. Yeah. And then the scene with Don, you know, it was an excuse to bring Don back for one last time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have so many more questions that I want to get to, but I'm going to set those aside for the future. I'd love to have you back again. It's time to turn it over to the fans.
Okay.
So Michelle Lee wanted to know, Martin, if you could direct a favorite movie or series from your childhood, what would it be?
Oh, wow. If I could
direct... What did you grow up on loving? That you could take a swing at?
I think in terms of movies, I've always wanted to do a Master and Commander kind of ship-based movie.
Wow, on the high seas.
Yeah, and I was a big submarine fan. I was a big, you know, there was a old movie called Grey Lady Down, which I loved as a submarine movie. And, you know, I have always wanted to do them. You've seen it. I mean, in Stargate, in Sanctuary, and whenever I get a chance to do, you know, submarine, I'm all over submarine. And
absolutely. You made a meal out of it with Small Victories. That was so cool.
And so I've told the story about being in the torpedo tube. Right? Yeah. And for me, I loved being in submarines. And so I think it would be a submarine movie or a square rigger or a barkentine kind of movie where I'm you know, being able to shoot it on the sea. So a Master and Commander kind of thing I would love to. And the period pieces. I like period pieces because of you know, the things that it offers you.
Well, yeah, there's so much attached to it, like sociologically. You got people interacting in a certain way at a certain period of time with certain things that they are, certain foibles that they are dealing with. There's a whole ton of stuff that goes along with that, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting ones I think recently was there was a War of the Worlds that was set in Victorian England, and it was like, wow, it was really an interesting take. So. Yeah,
there's also Cowboys versus Aliens, but I don't think I wouldn't have done that one.
Yeah, I hear you. Vicky Cartwright, I would like to ask if Martin Wood is a secret Sam and Jack shipper, as lots of Jack and Sam moments happened in the episodes he directed. You talked to us about Out of Mind in that scene with Rick and Amanda, but I'm interested to hear.
I was one of the very first people to start pushing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I knew that it was a deal, and because Rick and Amanda had so much fun doing it, you know,
the chemistry.
Yeah.
Solitudes is all you.
and I mean that was where it started with you know, that very close contact where she's lying down beside him, you know. And
It's my sidearm, I swear.
that's my secret. I know. I was just about to say that is one of those great lines. But truthfully, I was a big promoter of the salmon jack, and then when I got to do things like the saran wrap, you know,
Yes.
between them, you know, and that moment of being able to look at each other's faces through the force field like that.
Upgrades and divide and conquer. He's talking about.
Yeah. That for me was I very much liked promoting that kind of stuff. So I would say yes, I'm a shipper.
It brought tension to the show in a series where you have the Air Force clearly saying in the same chain of command, this cannot happen. So
Right.
you cannot deny eros between human beings. It
Yeah.
simply exists. So
Yeah.
let's acknowledge it at the very
Yeah.
least. And you guys were able to do that
Yeah.
for sure. Let me see here. Eva, one of the filming locations in Virgin River is Jack's cabin. Did it remind you of any Stargate memories?
Wow. I chose it.
I've been. It's a wonderful location.
Yeah, and it's very close to my house.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, in fact, I was setting up a shot with a crane, very reminiscent of the fish jumping out of the water shot.
Oh, the
and
pullback at the end of yeah.
And I put
Threads and moments.
Mel and Jack sitting where Jack and Sam had been sitting on that little bridge there. And now there's a deck built across the pond right now that I started using with Virgin River, but it gives you the best look at the cabin. And the interesting thing is never having gone into the cabin and Stargate, it's having this whole set that's built inside the cabin. I did go inside it in Primeval New World. I was inside the actual cabin, which is terrible. You don't want to be in there.
It's very small.
Yeah, and if you have a respirator on.
Oh, got it.
But we shot in there for Primeval New World, and so when we built it for Virgin River, it's so different than what I imagined it would be for Sam and Jack or for Jack in his cabin. But yeah, it's always the same. It's always the same shots. It's always the same feeling because it's a very small area that you can be in.
Claire Cowan wanted to know, did you keep your costume from Continuum and filming in the Arctic?
Yeah. It's so funny. My wife has been trying to clear out this area that we've got downstairs. And I was actually looking at some of the stuff I have down there. I have several of the SG black jackets. They were comfortable. And I've got one of Chris's, which thank God is still too big for me. But I have all of the stuff I wore with, I know why Claire's asking it because she wants to buy it, but it won't fit you, Claire. It's not like the Amanda stuff you get, but yes, I do have a bunch of that stuff. I have the boots. I have the, I don't think the big coat I kept because I had a red one. That was the white one that I was wearing, was not nearly as warm. But yeah, all the rest of the costume that I had on there, because we were all wearing icebreaker.
Yeah.
This time, the merino wool, which was amazing.
Just crazy the amount of punishment you guys put up with to get those amazing shots on
Favorite
film.
Favorite time shooting.
Absolutely.
Back there in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Teresa MC, have you always been interested in space travel or perhaps even time travel when growing up?
Space travel, absolutely. I had all the Saturn V rockets. I had all I had the lunar lander. I had I had everything in my room. It was just covered in that kind of stuff. And for years and years wanted to be an astronaut. And this is before Canadian astronauts were a thing. And my parents kept trying to convince me, no, you're not going to be an astronaut because there's no astronauts that are Canadian. And they were never harsh like that, but it was a reality that at the time to be an astronaut. And I spent most of my very young life wanting to be an astronaut and watching everything. I was such a sci-fi junkie when I was young. I read everything. I had a massive. I mean, the books behind you see are Heinlein, Asimov, Bradbury. They're everything I could get. I still have. So when I see things like the Foundation series coming out and so that I jump on those things. I love those things.
Very cool, man.
Anything that is canon sci-fi, I was a huge fan of. Snowpiercer, not so much, but
I liked the movie.
I like the movie. I honestly like parts of the series and things like this. I think what they're doing is incredible to make it work the way it is. I would work on it if I was given the opportunity. But
there you go.
It's the story that I had in my head was not the story that's being told now, and that's part of it.
I think that in the film, when I saw the monologue that Chris Evans has at the end of that, I was like, that is Oscar material. Yeah, that is a harsh scene.
Yeah.
What did you think of Dune?
I loved it. I've seen it 4 times now. And because I never liked the first Dune,
I couldn't care for the movie either.
No, and
the miniseries is good.
It's okay, but still, it wasn't what I thought. And then when I saw what Villeneuve did with the size, like that, I keep going back to this. When when those little ships get spit out in space, and then suddenly you see the size of them on the planet, I'm thinking, that's what Denis does so well, is that he can create that sense of size of what it was. And the sandworms, the same thing. And honestly, I really love what Timothée Chalamet did with it. I think that I'm looking forward to what Zendaya does with it in the second part.
Jason was wonderful.
Jason,
he was Duncan.
And it's so funny because Jason gets away with playing Jason all the time. if you know who Ronan was, you know who Aquaman is, you know who Conan is, because he does that so well. And he really, I love watching Jason like that. And I what's funny to me is looking at him wearing that helmet and going, his head wouldn't fit in a helmet like that. Because I always had that trouble with, we couldn't get the helmet, that space helmet on Jason's head. It fits Chris's head. It doesn't fit Jason's head.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I get a kick out of watching Jason all the time because it's the Jason I know.
Exactly. And it's going to carry him far.
Yeah.
Akos, Thomas Navaki, a favorite or one of your weirder cameos in Stargate?
The one where I'm in and I don't remember what episode it was, when I'm in the elevator, and Rick comes in, and he wanted to say something, and I always go back to the fact that we had this. Brad had this plan. If we could get,
aren't you in Lost City, shaking your head over the crossword puzzle? Isn't that you?
So. I think so.
I think that's it.
Honestly, it's the one where what I was doing was I was experimenting with a new way to do the elevator, so I could actually move the set piece in front of it, and I put myself in that scene. In Lost City, I remember I was in the corridors with Dan.
Oh, okay.
In that, so we could put ourselves into Atlantis if we wanted to. But yeah, I can't remember what episode it was from, but that was my favorite one, was that version of it. I got to tell you, my favorite Dan Shea one was when he gets knocked off the stairs and has to land. That
upgrades. Hey, Siler.
Yeah. That was my favorite Dan Shea one. And I think, was I at the bottom of the stairs on that one looking at helping him? I think that's where I was on that one.
I remember something about this story, but I just remember thinking, what a tricky, if you get that wrong, he's going to go sliding. And man, That guy put up with a lot of punishment, and his line in 200 is the best. Why is this always happening to me?
Yeah.
Let me see here. Tin Man wanted to know, I'd like to know if any of the sets are still available from any of the series. Those have been long gone, haven't they?
They are long gone, yeah. Yeah. I know some people have recreated the boardroom in their basement. I know some people, and there's an awful lot of people out there who have sets in their houses, but no, I don't think that any of the sets still exist.
Have you seen Stargate Network?
I have. Yeah.
The Unreal build.
Yeah.
It's getting better and better. It is so cool.
Yeah.
What, Chantel Leo, what is your favorite episode of Sanctuary?
Of Sanctuary?
Uh-huh.
I think for lots of different reasons, Next Tuesday was.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah. But there's a couple of them. Honestly, Kush was one of my favorites too. And it's just because it's so contained and because we met so many cool characters in that. But I think Next Tuesday was probably one of my favorites. I mean, there's so many good episodes in that for different reasons were incredible. I mean, anytime I get to have Ian and Amanda fight for 5 days, it's going to be a good episode, So that was a great episode.
Is it streaming anywhere right now? I haven't followed up on Sanctuary in a while.
I don't think so. I know that there's been, and I have to be very careful about what I say about it right now.
Of course.
There is movement right now.
Okay.
There is movement in Sanctuary World. So
is that is that the next iteration?
Yeah,
potentially.
I have to be careful about what I say. So
of course.
But yes,
there's
movement. There's talk.
All right, I like that.
I'll say this: there's more than talk.
Okay, good for you. So potential, if there was a next thing, that there's potential involvement on your part.
Potentially, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's you have to know that the forces that be have talked to Damien, Amanda, and myself, about that. But I can't say much more than that.
Okay. Well, that's for Sanctuary fans. I'm excited for you guys. Terrific. Jonathan Foss, what for you was a big difference between directing Stargate and directing Sanctuary?
Sanctuary had much more control of.
That's true.
Because there were the three of us really making all of the decisions in that, Amanda and Damien and I. It was there was much more camaraderie involved in that because it wasn't as big a machine. It was a very small machine that we bled into every day. There was always blood on the carpet with it that we had to sort of deal with. And so for that reason, Sanctuary was a passion project that I got to be more passionate about because it was my blood that was there on the carpet, and truthfully, it had started with a specific idea. Damien walking into my office from across the hall, handing me a script and saying, "What do you think?" And me going, "Oh my God." And then it sort of, exponentially took off from there.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Summer wanted to know, I heard that the character of Martin was based on you.
I wish. I wish. No, I mean, Martin was based on Willie Garson is what it was. It was very much written for him. The name was the same, but
coincidence.
I don't think that Brad or Robert or any of the guys had, or Paul or Joe had me in mind when they were writing that character. I wish, but I can't take any credit for it.
Understood. Tune Tamasha. Martin, which episode had the most reshoots and retakes And why? Weather, props, camera issues.
The pilot. The pilot's how I started with it. We went in, I reshot the whole scene of the escape from the prison was a reshoot.
The whole scene?
Yeah. I mean, it was just the whole escape was a reshoot.
What happened?
It didn't turn out the way that Brad and Jonathan had wanted it to. And so that was my I was firsting the third episode with Rusty in it, and got asked if I could do. In fact, I was going to leave. I don't know if I've told this story before, but I was the first AD on the third and the fifth episode.
So Enemy Within with Kowalski's death, and then the fifth one would be like, okay.
And so I was only the first AD on those two, and I was there. I had done I directed a series called Two. I'd done an episode of that, and I had done I directed a bunch of stuff for a movie called Them with Tony Todd in it, and had really wanted to concentrate on directing. I was firsting at the time. Ron French was producing. I'd gone in and talked to Michael and Rick and said, I really want to direct, but I will first this stuff until Bill Mizell is freed up and comes back, because Andy Makita was doing the very first episode. Then Bill was supposed to do the ones after that. I was caught in being able to do that. And so at the end of the last episode, I sort of turned to them and said, I'm going to go. This is my last day. And Michael said, can you come into Rick's trailer for a second? And I walked into Rick's trailer, and Rick said, we're keeping you as a second unit director. And that's really what happened. It was me being pulled into Rick's trailer, and Michael and Rick saying, we're keeping you as a second unit director. Brad and Jonathan need you to do something with the pilot. And so I went back in and shot a whole ton of stuff with it. So I think that was probably, we didn't do a lot of reshoots on these shows. There wasn't the ability to be able to do it. There wasn't the money to do it or the ability. So there wasn't a ton of stuff that we had to reshoot often. The only scenes really that I can remember, there was another one, and truthfully, I can't remember what episode it was for. I do. It was Other Guys.
Oh, season 6.
Yeah, The Other Guys, I had to reshoot a scene, and it was because something had technically gone wrong with it, and we had to reshoot it. And Patrick had to come back for it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
There's it. You do enough planning in advance, you can pull almost anything off, weather notwithstanding, in a couple of other things.
Yeah.
But was there ever a circumstance where it was like, we got this. This is what we have. I'm not happy with it, but it gets the job done? Or were you always able to make it work? No,
blowing up a beach once was trouble for me. Do you remember the run with when we were on the planet? I can't remember the name of the episode. The team is running toward us down the beach, and it's being blown up by a glider.
Okay, there was. Is that 48 hours? Because they're running toward camera. It's being blown up by a glider. Oh yes. Okay. Into the fire. No. In the line of duty. The line of duty, right?
Yes. Amanda is over top of. Yes, that's when
Jolinar pays her a visit.
Right. So that beach scene there, we did it twice. The first time it didn't work out, and I had to do it again, which meant we had to replant all the bombs. We had to do
God.
And the second time was one of those things where I went, I can't do it again. I have to live with it. It worked. I mean, I had 5 cameras on it, so I knew it was going to work. The first time it didn't work. And it wasn't one of those situations where it's like, hey, let me show you what it looks like. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, let's roll cameras. It wasn't that. It didn't pan out the way it was supposed to, the shot. And I needed something very, very specific with the glider going into the gate.
Yeah, because there's that wide shot of it like coming around, and I know what you're talking about now.
And so that one I did have to I did have to settle for on that one, but there wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of it. Usually it was big effects things that happened like that. Mm-hmm. Another time was when we found the ancient library. the
Yes.
face of it. And to get to that, there was that whole blowing up that whole field. With we were under attack at that point. That was when we were in incredibly dry tinder time, and there were no fires allowed, and we're blowing up a field filled with grass. And I knew that when I had one shot at it, and that was it. So again, I had to be happy with that one.
Mm-hmm. That's it. You have to be happy. You never don't necessarily get another pass.
Right.
Raj wanted to know, and Raj's birthday is today. Happy birthday, Raj.
Happy birthday, Raj.
What are your thoughts on the future of the franchise? I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, it would continue forever. Quite honestly, it has legs forever, because there's so much more that you could do with it, and it was one of the first times that people experimented with humor and sci-fi at that level,
and in the now.
Yeah, and it really works, and it really that what really worked on Stargate SG-1 was the team. That was what made that show. The idea behind it was great. The team that pulled it off was great. And I'm talking about behind the scenes and in front of the camera. That team worked for it, which is why Stargate worked. Atlantis, universe, all those things, those elements all came together in the right way. It is certainly possible to do more of that. And I certainly hope in the future that it does happen, because there are some very big brains that know how to make that kind of TV show very, very good. And I'm always talking to Brad when I say that Brad and Robert and Paul and Joe and Jonathan, when he originally started it, there are massive brains there that came up with these things, and everybody else, Jeff King and Damien and all these other guys that came in and were writing the show, all these other people that were part of that team. Alan, there's so much there that these writers had these giant brains that could make a new series. I hope it happens.
I teeter back and forth on whether or not Amazon, because sooner or later Amazon's going to do something with that property. I don't see anything else happening. The question is, are they going to want to go blank slate so that they can have the most creative flexibility? Or are they going to be willing to hitch themselves to 350 hours of story? And
I mean, that's always been the Emmerich kind of argument, right? Who has the bigger audience?
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Are we good on time? Do you need to split?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
A couple more and I'll let you go. That dude right there, and this is something that has bothered me immensely as a canon hound. There were multiple iterations of models in Atlantis, particularly the city itself, evolved over the course of the show. I am a Rainmaker faithful in terms of the original design from seasons like 1 through 3. Later on in the series, you get to more angular designs like this one here that doesn't have like the lower levels that would have been originally under the ice in Rising. Was that anything on your guys' part, or did the vendors just create new models? What happened there? Because you can see it with the naked eye. You can see the differences in the show later on. Yeah.
I think to begin with, Bruce was adamant that there was a design that we wanted to stick with that was something that Bridget and Richard and I mean that we were building the interior to be a certain thing. The exterior always had a discordance with the interior to a certain extent. And I think what happened was that discordance started to work on everybody so that the newer models incorporated what the interior was a little bit more to make the outside work better, so to make Atlantis that much better. Like there was never that whole idea of going down was difficult for us. We had multiple levels, but we didn't have multiple levels that we could constantly move from. And when we used the effect stage, that was where it showed us the skeletal structure of it, but it didn't give us the opportunity to be able to go, down, 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 where we needed to go to, to discover things. And that was the original idea, I think, was that we could get there. We could go down. And I mean, there was a line that McKay had talking about how much deeper it was than what we were seeing and how we couldn't get down to those levels. And I don't think we ever really explored those the way that we needed to.
It was a big city.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, that was what it was supposed to be, was big. And the idea of not having a Jeffries tube that could move you sideways in it was another thing.
Oh, a turbo lift, yeah, or the ring transport room, yeah.
Sorry, the Jeffries tube was the other thing, yeah.
That was a crawl space.
Yeah. Anything that could get you into it. I mean, you had to move to it all the time. You didn't have that ability to be able to move. So when you're seeing where the puddle jumpers are launching from and where the command towers, you're going, well, that takes a long time to get from there to there, And I think, again, that's something that when you're designing something like that, you have to start thinking, oh, we need people movers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before we wrap this up, Tune Tamasha, I didn't see this question near the bottom here, and this pricked my interest as well. With Rick, you have a darker Jack in episodes like Shades of Grey, where he's arguing in the briefing room about stealing to save our butts from alien invasion, and Red Sky, where he nearly shoots a priest or an acolyte point blank in the head. Mm-hmm. How hard was it to manifest Dark Jack with Rick?
Where the darkest Jack comes is
the child, the loss of the child.
No, it's not where it comes from, but where you see the darkest one is actually on the ice when he's not familiar with what the Stargate program is. When in Continuum, when you see that Jack, you see what that Jack was capable of if he hadn't been a part of the Stargate program. He's by the book. He's which is not the O'Neill that we know.
And that version also hasn't lost a child.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And so I think that one of the things that you see with the Dark Jack is hints of the movie Jack O'Neill. Mm-hmm. Where let's blow it up. Let's this is the mission. This is what we're supposed to be doing here. And Daniel Jackson is the stop, sober second thought to it all. But truthfully, if you see, the Kurt Russell version of Jack, you see the darker Jack there. And so O'Neill had that ability to be able to be that, if he referenced that kind of stuff. Rick naturally liked the humor of Jack. You ended that sentence with a preposition. That's Jack. That's Richard being Jack O'Neill.
And it's come out of the crucible of pain and loss, because he's hiding. When he touches the pain, like at the end of Window of Opportunity, he lashes out.
Yeah.
And so it's always there is that undercurrent, and I think that's one of the things that makes him delicious to watch.
And I think in Red Sky, what's interesting too is you see backs against the wall in a way that they weren't normally back against the wall.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we can fix this, right? No, we can't.
No.
And when that happens, it becomes, you see the command Jack come out. Mm-hmm. And there were times, there were a number of times when he had to make those difficult decisions, and again, it's the humanity of Richard Dean Anderson,
right,
that gets injected into so much of this stuff, because that is Rick. Mm-hmm. Rick has trouble playing dark, mm-hmm. Because he's not that guy. Like when if you ever see Um, oh, now the series name has gone out of my head. Where he was the drunk cowboy. What was that?
Is that
What was it?
Legend?
Legend.
I
Yeah.
have unfortunately not seen it. I do
So
want to see
when
it.
you,
Him and John Delancey are great.
yeah, but when you see that you see Rick playing that guy, you go, oh wow, that's a totally different character than I've ever
Mm-hmm.
seen before. I mean, you see in MacGyver and in O'Neill, you see similarities,
Mm-hmm.
which is the Richard part of it. But Legend, which he had so much fun playing, you know, uh, it's a different Rick.
And it acknowledges the importance of Daniel in helping to soften those edges down from what from the dark place that Daniel helped pull him out of in the movie, and then
Yeah.
Sam and Teal'c particularly, I think in many ways, more than some of the others, really helped him find his family again in the team of SG.
Well, because he had to do it himself.
Yeah.
You know, Tilk was finding that himself. He was unhomed.
Yeah.
And in being unhomed and literally without a command structure,
Yeah.
he had no idea what to do.
For this, you can stay at my place.
Yeah.
It's one of the best lines from the pilot.
Yeah.
Last question. Peace Rider wanted to know, it's my sidearm, I swear. Was this an ad-lib, as far as you remember? Or was that in the script?
I think it was in the script.
Okay.
It was in the script. I could go back and look at it to see.
We could come up with some of the most amazing ad-libs.
The ad-lib that came out was the "You're MacGyver." That came out of Amanda's mouth and made everybody crack up. That was an ad-lib.
And the Stuck on a Glacier with MacGyver, didn't you set that up? Didn't you set up that
She
gag?
came up and asked if it was okay if she did it, and I said yes.
Yeah, because you're gonna blow a take. You better ask your director.
Yeah,
absolutely, Martin. Privilege, absolute privilege having you on once again.
I feel the same way, David. Thank you.
And all the continued success with you. Please tell Amanda hello the next time you see her.
I will.
And thank you again for everything that you have done to continue shining the light on the franchise as we move forward, sir.
I'm here anytime you want to ask questions. I'm willing to answer them if I can remember them. But what happens when I talk to you is you start to bring up things that I'm tapping into things that I haven't thought about for years, but I love it.
It's all there. And it was a great period. It was a great period of TV history,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself, and I'll reach out to you later this year.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Summer as well for putting this together with you.
Thank you, Summer. You take care, man. I'm
All right,
going to wrap
care.
up the show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Martin Wood, producer and director from Stargate. I love this guy. It's just always amazing having him on. He is one of these people that has an absolute wealth of knowledge about the show. And all you have to do is just give him one little thread, and he'll just start pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. And all these stories come out. So he's a wealth of knowledge. Many more episodes that I'd like to talk with him about as we move forward. I have been putting off a few questions for me because I just get to the end of the show and I'm so excited to move on to the next one. And so I just wanted to get to those while I have you guys for a minute. I know a lot of, so there have been a number of requests for me to answer some of these questions. Raj Luthra, if given the opportunity, would you travel to space? I cannot wait for the day when suborbital space travel becomes like $2,000 a ticket, or even cheaper than that, because I am totally on board for that, and I think that we are within reach of that in the next few decades to come. So for sure, going up into space. So and if I could go further, absolutely. David, a different question from Jeantien. How tall are you? You looked very, very tall in the con videos. I am 6'3". From Gary T. Don't press the 1. Can I get this on a mug from the Dial the Gate store? # don't press the 1. Is that a Stargate reference? Can anyone back me up on that, Gary T? So there's a lot of different merchandise items. I'll get to that in just a moment here. David, FYI, everyone would like more trivia at a later date. So one of the things that I have not talked about yet, and I've seen several comments about this, is, it's been great to have the big group, but we'd like to get back to like the first or second trivia with just me and Darren, just have one-on-one. And so I think I still like to try to do a trivia every quarter, every 3 or 4 months. So I think the next one, I think I'd like to invite Darren on, and we'll go head to head once again, and see which one of us has got the goods. Thanks once again to Martin for coming on. And if you've enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing it with fellow Stargate friends. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. And if you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages, as well as cups and other accessories in a variety of sizes and colors over at dialthegate.com. From the merchandise tab, click on a specific design to see what items are being offered. Checkout is fast and easy. You can use a credit card or PayPal. You can visit dialthegate.com for this, or go straight to dialthegate.com/merch. And thanks so much for all your support. I cannot do this show on my own. It requires a team effort. Summer, Tracy, Reese, Keith, Jeremy, Anthony, my producer, Linda, Gabber Fury. All these people who help bring the show to life and bring the word out. Big thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He is the web developer for Dial the Gate. Also a big thank you to Jeremy Heiner, our webmaster who keeps the site up to date. Next week, I'm working on having 2 interviews, but one currently is greenlit. The other one, there's a COVID situation, so we'll see what happens. For January the 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Brian J. Smith, Matthew Scott from Stargate Universe will be joining us. We're going to get his take on the new Matrix, and he's going to share some stories from the set of Universe as well. Brian, he and I go way back before he even shot a frame of Universe. I was the first Stargate fan to interview him when he was cast in the role of Matt. So very much looking forward to having him back and catching up with him on SGU and The Matrix, which if you have not seen it yet, go check it out. I loved it. It's a love letter to the originals. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining me on Dial the Gate. And next week we'll bring in Brian and we'll go from there. We'll see you on the other side.